Ooh, hello there, my fellow miners and crafters. GoodTimesWithScar here, and welcome back to the world of hermits and crafting. And we're here at Scar's Frontier Outpost, getting ready to work on our landscaping. And I know this has been a requested video for quite some time, and there's Stan enjoying some cake there. In this video, we're going to work on our landscaping, our theme, our story, why these tents are here, add the trees, and all those cool little details. So first things we're going to start to work on is our pathways. So all pathways lead to the campfire. So the campfire is going to go in the center here, and we're going to do a really cool design with a cook pot and all those good things. And then around the back over here, we are going to add some blacksmith smeltery equipment. So on the back side here, this is going to be a smeltery, and I think that'll really finally finish off the outside exterior design of that particular tent. And now the pathways. So the pathways, like I said, will lead to the center, and those are going to kind of outstretch over to here, and that's where we're going to start today. So let's grab out our shovel, and we're going to start right about here. So I've been trying to get as much of this dirt, filled in along here as I can. So we're about here. I think I can cover the rest of this. I think I have enough dirt at this point, but let's start going right here. So first thing we're going to start to do here is just make, just a basic pathway. So as you can see, I'm just going to make kind of a meandering pathway, and the pathway is going to kind of, get a little wider, a little shorter. It's going to kind of bow out here and there and all those good things. So let me get this all organized. And there we go. We got our path all kind of lined up and ready to go. See how it kind of wanders about? And we can put plants like right here, and then maybe a tree right there, and all sorts of really cool details. Now, as you can see, the path is going to get a little skinnier. And yeah, so then once we hit it like that, look at this. We get the beautiful new 1.9 path blocks, which originally I was kind of iffy on, but I'm really warming up to them. Point out here is this bow is getting kind of distracting. What do you guys think about the other hand slot, especially like adding, different blocks over there? I find it to be incredibly cool to have that extra ability to have a hand, put a torch down, things of that nature. But one thing I thought would be awesome is to have that extra bow kind of hanging out there, if you will. But I've kind of found it to be a little bit of annoyance, especially shields, just because of the sheer size of the shield, kind of blocking the view of the video, especially. I think it's easier to deal with as a person, playing than a person, watching. I think watching a video, the shield and those things can get a little distracting. Maybe it's because we're new and we're just getting used to it, or is this something that's going to be a little bit difficult to actually, get used to? I'm not sure yet. I'm still trying to make up my own mind on that. And as you can see, look at that. Look at how beautiful this looks. And you can see how in the center, it's more trampled. So it's a little dustier, a little bit more brown. And then off to the edges, you can see it's a little greener, a little wetter, which I kind of like. I think that's pretty cool. So as you can see, let's just finish up this little section right here. There we go. Get that all complete. And then I'm just going to hit this along here. And I should be using just like a stone shovel to do this instead of my nice pick. But what we're going to work on now is we're just going to start to kind of cut out some of these edges here like so. And we're going to grab ourselves a little coarse dirt, and we're going to fill this in along here like that. And then this will just help us start to kind of add more design, more texture to our little pathway here. So we're just going to start to add this along here. Now, next thing I want to do, so once we get this a little more complete, also at the very end of the trail, I want it to kind of, see how it's kind of, slowly getting a little shorter. What you can do too is just maybe make a couple extra little blocks here and there. And then those can be grass blocks. So as you can see, boom, bam. And then I'm going to stick this one right there. And I'm going to put one right here, as you can see. And then I'm just going to give him a little hit on the head. There we go. And see how it kind of disperses itself. And then maybe just clean this up just ever so slightly more. And there we go. So something like that. See how the path kind of diffuses out. So I think that's pretty cool. And then we'll cut in these last pieces along here so you can kind of get a feel for that. All right, the last thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of grass just on the edges of the build. So the reason I'm doing this is it looks like these parts are a little more trampled. And I think that looks a little nicer than just having the abrupt dirt transition. So I think that'll look really cool. Now the problem is, as you can imagine, the grass blocks are a little expensive. So I have to go and kind of hike quite a bit to either get these at Wells' shop or get them from over there, which I did because I needed to start the video and to walk all the way over the Brown District or walk across that peninsula. I decided to do that, but I might have to hit up Wells' shop at this point and see if he actually has any other grass blocks in stock. There we go. Cut those pieces along there. But as you can see, I think that'll look pretty good. I just want to give you guys a really good kind of idea of how the path's going to go. And I think that'll look pretty cool. And then, of course, we can kind of mix in a couple extra, blocks like this, just to make sure everything is looking good. And I think that's a really good start for our pathway, as you can see. So give me a couple minutes, let me kind of fill this all in, and I'll be right back. All right, and welcome back. And as you can see, the pathway is slowly coming together. We have some of the basic structural blocks of the path complete. We have, of course, the trampled pathway. We have some little details on the sides. Next, we need to add some more grass, some more detail like rocks and things of that nature. And I think it'll come together pretty darn cool. And of course, I added another section on this side looking super fancy. And then, of course, this will lead into our smeltery. So let's get right into our camp stove. So this is kind of the focal point of the the landscape. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of carve this out, get ourselves a nice little box here. And then let's see, we're going to go down here and then we're going to place that like so. And then let me cover that up and grab this. Wonderful. So what we're going to do is we're going to catch this on fire. Okay. And then, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that up there. Okay. And I'm going to place this here, looking good so far. And then we'll place that down like so. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to slowly kind of carve this out a little bit. I want this to be kind of a, a campfire, so I want some rock and different details like that built up along the sides. So I'm going to put this like that and then kind of mix it up here a little bit over here, put that down like that. So each little angle, we're just kind of mixing in different details. And I think this will look really cool. So let's see, why don't we jump over here and grab a little andesite like that. See how we're kind of mixing in a couple different materials. So it's not all exactly the same. And then we can always kind of, build up an extra little side over here, put one of those over there. And I think that'll look cool. Now I know what you might be thinking right now. Scar, did you just say that you're going to create a campfire? And is this campfire going to actually have fire? And yes, it is. It's going to have fire. But you know my rule in Scarland. And if you're new around here, I have a particular rule for my survival world. So my survival world is Scarland, where we take survival building to the extreme, of course. And in that world, we have a couple rules. And the main rule of that world, one of the main rules, is that there will never be any fire ever set in that land again. We had some incidents in the early days of Scarland when Scarland was young and new and we were just learning the ropes. I really wanted a beautiful fireplace, a very, very beautiful fireplace. And well, what happened was, in those days, I usually just built. So I would take a design in my head and I'd build it and then show it on video. I didn't really know quite how yet to do kind of on-camera buildings, if you will. It was right when I started YouTube. And what I did was I built a beautiful house. Like, it was pretty good for some of my first builds, actually. And it had a gigantic fireplace as its focal point. So it was kind of a castle slash kind of house. So it was like, it was like a mini kind of castle house. So, all right, there we go, looking good. And what it was once I got to the end, I was about to start recording. I was like, time to light the fireplace. I lit it, burnt down the entire house that was wood, and devastated, absolutely devastated. And then I spent another week or so trying to get, another video up. So I built another house, and this one you can actually still find in my old videos. Like, you can actually see the original area, the original house of Scarland. Well, give or take another couple of days. Well, that burnt down too when I got overzealous and thought, why don't I try that fireplace again? And I burnt down the world again. So that's a thing. I just keep seeming to do that back in the old days. And then maybe even a year went by, I started working on what I like to call the kind of the Desert Cube. And the Desert Cube has a museum within it. It's kind of like the Scarland Museum, if you will. So the Scarland Museum, I was getting complete on it. I wanted a library within the museum. So I thought, whoa, what better thing to add to a library would be a fireplace, a roaring fireplace, a nice warm fire to, sit by. Well, that was an awful decision, because after that, I burnt down the forest around our greenhouse projects and all those different things. And yeah, so I just kept burnt things down. And from then, I just had a rule. My friends, and that was no fire ever allowed within the Scarland boundaries. It's been a good rule because we actually haven't burnt down anything recently. We've had some fires, so we've definitely had fire. Of course, if lightning strikes one of our giant forests within the world, it will burn partial sections of that down, and that's happened before. But me and fire, we just don't get along, apparently. Which I think that's actually a good thing, maybe, in a way. I think that's a good thing. There we go. So yeah, I'm just adding a little extra detail. And then once I get some lava, I'm going to put it down there. But I don't have lava at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that along there, and then I'm going to, wait, what do we do? Yeah, why don't we do that? I like that. If I had some carpet out, also put a row of it up there. I think that would look actually kind of cool. So we just got like a little smelter back here, and I think that looks really nice. So one thing I would like to do is add this anvil, but where to add the anvil? That's the question, my friends. That's the question. I think I'm going to place it right there. Awesome. And then on this side over here, and I don't have a bucket, so I'm actually going to place that down like that. And I'm actually going to stick just a couple of these guys like this, just to add a couple little extra details along here. There we go. Sweet. And then I'm going to swoop over here. I'm going to place this like that. Bam. And then over here, I'm going to grab out some bars. I'm just going to place those along there like that. And then I'm going to grab out signs, and these are kind of going to put some shears on those. So it looks like, you know, some little tongs that you're pulling something out of the embers. And I think we got a good start on our little blacksmith back there. I think that's definitely pretty cool. So let's jump over here, make sure nothing has burnt down. And look at that, it's still alive. All right, so let's move into phase 3 of our build here. And that now is the terraforming, where we add custom trees and plants and all those fancy details. So let me go reset my inventory and I'll be right back. All right, and welcome back. And look at this, we haven't burnt down a thing yet. And what I've done is also extended our paths to the edges of the tent. Now, in some of the little shaded areas of the tent, I have added a little bit of green grass. So I think that looks pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of bone meal, cut out any flowers, and just put a very, very small smidgen of grass along there. Now, you might notice these 2 little blocks here. That's what I want to add, maybe a couple little plants here and there. So in these little spots along here, I just want to add just a little more life, get a little more green into the biome. Now, we're not dealing with the kind of the nicest looking green grass in the area, because the mesa does apply a very kind of dingy dark green to the design. I'm not 100% a fan of that, but it's what we're working with, and I think it will in the end look okay. So as you can see, look at that. We're starting to add some of these little details. I think that's going to start to come in really nice. Cutting out any flowers. There we go. Looking good so far. Look at that. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it's exciting to kind of see a little more life being built into the design. Very, very cool. Because we're in a mesa, I would also like to incorporate, you know, here and there, I just want to incorporate a little bit of hardened clay, because of course this is kind of the biome that we're in, and I think that looks good. Just here and there, kind of apply just a little bit of this, maybe a little bit under the wagon, and it's just a constant little palette of color that we're adding, if you will. We're kind of like painting a picture, and we're slowly but surely adding more and more layers of detail and story within our world, and see how we're adding life to it. Structurally, the blocks all look nice in my opinion. We have the tents, they look nice, but right now I think the area really needed was a little bit of life, a little bit more design to it. And I think that's finally what we're also getting in at this point. We have the campfire, we have the pathway, so it looks like, you know, people have been in here wearing down is that even a word? Wearing down the pathways, as you can see, walking between the tents and all those good things. And I think that's going to start to come out really cool. And I think around the tent, maybe we can add just a little more hardened clay right there. We can mix in just a little bit of orange, but I want to move on from there. There we go. All right, so one thing I want to do in this little corner over here is this spot right here could definitely use a bit of a rock. So rocks are an interesting thing, because you want the rocks when you're designing this stuff to flow with the environment. So a rock just doesn't just sit on the dirt, it lives in the dirt. As you can see, you want it to be kind of in the dirt. You want to tuck it in there a little bit. You want to add all sorts of little details like this. See how it's kind of cutting into the dirt a little bit here and there. And then from that, you can kind of stick, you know, a couple leaves around there like that, and really make the rock feel like it's, you know, it's been there. It's been there for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. See how it's built in there like that? Looking super, super fancy. And then what we can do is, you know, cut in here like that, and looking good. So maybe this area looks a little bland, so we could do is just stick a little andesite right there, another rock living there. I think that looks really cool, and you can drop in another one right there. And you just add little bits of detail like that is what really makes a build come to life. And then, of course, adding the story elements to it, of course, with the wagon, the fireplace, and the smeltery, and all those good things are definitely all things that can really, really make a build come to life. And that's kind of the goal, really, isn't it? To try to make your things feel realistic, feel like it really has an environment that it's in, and the people really live in the little Minecrafters. And I think that's kind of at least a goal of mine anyway. There we go. And I think that's looking good. So let's jump over here real quick. And one thing I think it's cool is in these little shadow areas, you'd think around the tent like this, you'd think of a little bit more shadow and things of that nature. So that's why I like to put in just a little bit of green grass along there. And then from here, like this spot, that's where the grass is gonna grow outward. So I'm gonna stick another one of those right there, and then maybe just grow just a little bit onto the side, just a little bit. These tents have been here for a while, so that the the plants had a little bit of time to grow up on the side. There we go, cut out the flower, there we go, nice. I always cut out the flowers just because I find flowers to sometimes be a little unrealistic, especially when we're working with a particular color palette, and then there's just this random flower just there. But as you can see, this is kind of what I'm gonna work on. I'm gonna get some more rocks, I'm gonna get some more plant life, but staying in the same theme and palette that we just showed. So I'll see you in just a minute once we work on those trees. And welcome back. So I've been applying some more little details here and there, but now I wanna move on to our trees, because that is kind of the focal point, of course. So what we're gonna start with is some oak, and we're going to use birch leaves. And I may eventually replace all of the oak leaves in the design with birch, because it does maintain a fairly nice color for the design. So we're trying to work with something along the lines of a pine tree. So it's something you'd find maybe in the Sierras. So that's what I'm kind of working on right now. So as you can see, we're just gonna start placing these blocks along here. And in the end, we may even change these birch leaves to the oak leaves. Right now, this video is all about trial. It's all about error and learning from our ways. And I think we're doing pretty good so far. And I think the design is really coming out. And I think eventually we're gonna have a pretty darn sweet little design. So as you can see, we're just slowly building up the trunk of the tree. And then as you can see, we're going to space out a few leaves. So there is quite a bit of the trunk is actually showing. So I think that'll look really cool. And then from afar, this will look really nice. Now, I've never really built one of these particular designs in survival yet. I've just tested it in a creative world. So I am kind of curious, and hopefully this comes out fairly nice. It's so much easier, of course, to create a tree in the creative mode. Eventually you'll get the hang of it and it just comes natural, and then, you know, survival, creative, whatever. But when you first start out, I always recommend jumping into a creative world and just giving it a couple test runs, you know, give a couple tree designs and see how they flow together. And as you can see, I don't want these trees to be very, you know, bushy, if you will. I want them to be very sparse, kind of spindly, kind of piney, if you will, because that's kind of the nature of the tree. But we also don't want it to look too derpy, so that's why we are applying a little more detail here and there and a couple more branches just to give it a little bit more definition. But like with anything, we always will have plenty of time to add lots and lots more detail as we kind of move along here. Oh, hello. I'll cut that piece out there. And as you can see, that's looking fairly good. And I'm really starting to consider replacing all of the grass with that particular style leaf. And I think that's looking really nice. That's one little tree. I would like to start placing quite a few of them. Now there's one design element that I'm not gonna do today. And that, of course, is our little horse corral, if you will. The reason I'm not gonna do that yet is I don't have any leads. Because I would really like to have some leads for the horses to, you know, get all tied up, of course, to their posts and stuff like that. And I think it'll eventually be in one of these corners. But for now, we're just gonna put some of these trees along here. And how do you like the tree design so far? See how you kind of work it around, finding the right level of detail that you want. There we go, put that right there. And then we can kind of work our way up a little higher and start applying a little more detail on the sides. But trees are definitely one of my favorite things. I love making trees. As you probably know if you follow me on Scarland, there's so many trees. And one of the great things about 1.9 now, say we take all of our oak out of our inventory, watch this, hit the middle mouse button, bam, right in our inventory. That's a lifesaver right there. I just gotta get used to that because that's gonna make things so much easier when we have a full inventory. Oh, it's gonna be great. Okay, so I'm feeling good about this at the moment. I want to transition to here, as you can see, because I wouldn't mind this tree being a little taller than the rest. So I'm gonna go like that. There we go. Put that up to here. Bring this level up one more, like so. And I'm just gonna stick just a random branch there. And I need to thicken up the base of the tree. As you can see, we don't want it to be too skinny all the way up. So that's why we just want to build up the base here just a little bit. Make sure the base is proper dimensions. And like I said, make sure the oak is showing through because that'll really create a really nice kind of spindly pine. And I think that looks, let's take a look at that from afar. Here we go. I'm loving it. It's a little sparse on this side. Also remember, trees are wild. They live out in the nature. They get battered by the weather and all that stuff. So there is sides that are a little goofy, like a little blank on one side here and there. They're not perfect manicured trees by any means. And yeah, I like that. So what we can do is just continue to vary the size of the trees. We can go up a little bit higher like this one. We can start the base just a little bit higher like this. And I think that looks, I'm really liking this so far. So definitely give me some feedback, my friends. Definitely give me some feedback on how you're liking this. And yeah, so this tree is going to be quite a bit taller than the rest, but I think that's a good thing because we wanted to make sure that all the trees are varying in sizes. Like this one's kind of a medium, this one's going to be taller, and I'm going to do a smaller one right there. And I think that'll look pretty cool. So yeah, this is going to take a long time to perfect. But I think once we get the base of the trees, base of the plants and all that stuff, we'll really start to get an environment that really has some life to it. So yeah, let me continue to work on this tree. And then we'll do our final tour. All right, and welcome back. And as you can see, we've got quite a forest here around our camp tents. And I think this is starting to look pretty good and very kind of a Western with our spindly pine trees. And I think that came out pretty cool. We have our roaring fire. We have our grass and our rock and all sorts of beautiful little details now in our landscape. And hopefully this inspired you to create your own Western style frontier outpost. And yes, my friends, there's still quite a bit of work to go, but this does it for today. And I can't thank you enough for all the support on these brand new Hermitcraft series. And until next time, this has been Good Times with Scar, and we'll see you next time. All right, so we have our Luck of the Sea too, and we're gonna mix it with our super fishing rod, which we need a name for. And I want you guys to leave me a comment and let me know